This is episode 6 of Ruminate, a podcast about the opportunities and challenges that technology presents us with every day. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is my co-host, Robb Lewis. Hi, Robb.
Hi, John. How are you?
Very good. What's going on with you today?
I've just been busy. I had work yesterday, and then I was out straight after work, and I wanted to get back to do my Apple TV, so I was up pretty late doing that, and then I've been out this morning as well. So yeah, busy. It's nice to just sit down. How about you, John? You've been keeping busy?
Very busy. It was crazy at work this week. Plus, both released an Apple TV app as well as an update to Blink. So there was a lot going on for me this week as well. So if the two of us sound a little tired, that's probably why, because it's been a crazy week and I just want to lie down.
Well, once this conversation's over, John, we can go our separate ways and just relax for a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. That sounds like a plan. Well, why don't we dive right into follow-up to start with? And it's funny because right after we recorded last, I guess 2 weeks ago, I listened to the talk show John Gruber had Serenity Caldwell of iMore on, and she described exactly your problem with Apple Music. Did you listen to it?
Yeah, you text me to tell me to listen to it, so I kind of downloaded it and skipped to the right bit so I could get to it. And I was kind of just listening to her describing it, and it was just making me so sad because obviously Serenity Caldwell, she investigates this stuff, quite a lot, and she was saying, if you've already got Apple Music, like basically saying don't turn iTunes Match on, which is exactly what I did. I have managed to recover those files now. I did have them on another Mac that I've got in the house. But yeah, it's a little bit sad just listening to somebody describe exactly what I did wrong.
That I think that show came out. It might have come out the day before, but neither of us had listened to it yet. And I was just out and about on later in the day, Sunday, and I thought, oh my gosh, I got to send this link to Robb. This is exactly what he did. Not that you could fix it at that point, but if anyone is thinking about turning on iTunes Match, I guess if you're in you started your Apple Music free period later and don't like it and don't want to keep it, definitely listen to Serenity first, because she's got some good tips and goes into the details of how it works and how to avoid doing what Robb did.
Yeah, definitely. Another little bit of follow-up. This one related to that we spoke 2 weeks ago about plastic bags and people stealing baskets to save on the 5p charge. I was at my local Tesco and I saw 3 or 4 baskets stacked up in the car park in the kind of trolley return place. So, I've kind of seen evidence that people genuinely are taking the baskets out of the store just so they don't have to pay for the bags.
Oh my! So are these just like the smaller like plastic baskets as opposed to we call them shopping carts, but yeah, like trolleys, right?
Yeah, like the handheld kind of like a basket kind of thing. The Tesco have metal ones, but some of the stores do have plastic ones. But yeah, that's the kind of thing we're talking about there.
Yeah, probably some people take them all the way home too and don't leave them in the parking lot.
Oh, absolutely! I'm 100% sure that's happening.
Yeah, interesting.
So you were at Release Notes probably a couple of weeks ago now, I guess.
Yeah, well, actually, not even that long ago. I was driving. I was actually still in Indianapolis a week ago today. I don't even know what day it is. It's October 31st. I should know that. It's my anniversary. Don't tell my wife. Don't tell my wife. Yes, I was in Indianapolis for Release Notes. I went 2 Wednesdays ago. Left around noon. They had an opening reception and keynote that night that was done by Mike Hurley, which was excellent. I really enjoyed his talk. And then there were 2 days of talks, a full day on Thursday, a full day on Friday. And it was really fantastic. It was really well-run conference. It's done by the guys who do the Release Notes podcast, Charles Perry and Joe Chaplinsky. It's a great podcast if you're interested in the business side of iOS and Mac development. Definitely recommend the podcast, but I recommend the conference even more highly, because it was really nice to get together with a small group of people. There were about 150 attendees, so it was really easy to get to know people and mingle and talk to a lot of new people. Yeah,
that sounds really good. I mean, 150 is it's relatively small for for this type of conference. So what about the talks? Obviously, you said about Mike Hurley's talk. You had David Smith _ was talking as well. There was a few others.
Yep. There was so Mike opened it up and kind of told the story of where he's come from and where Relay came from. It's been about a year, I guess, since he quit his day job and went full time at Relay, and a little longer than that since they started Relay. But that's probably where most people know Mike and Stephen Hackett from. But both of them had years and years of hard work that led up to that, and so Mike's was kind of a story for him personally as to where he came from when he started back with his 70 Decibels podcasting network, and actually before that, before he even called it a network, when he just had a couple of shows. Through his years at 5x5 and the founding of Relay FM. So that was interesting talk. And then Underscore did a really good one about the title of it was "What is your superpower?" And it was really about figuring out what's unique about you and what can you do to leverage that uniqueness into success in business. But there were a lot of other good talks too. Robb from Martian Craft was there. He did one on some nuts and bolts of accrual versus cash accounting, which is he actually took what is a pretty dry topic and made it entertaining. Gene McDonald did a talk about marketing your apps through podcasts, which I found very interesting. Anybody wants to sponsor our show, get in touch. And then Jim Dalrymple closed the festivities with a very funny talk about fear and bad decisions, and talked a little bit about how when he started the Loop Insight, it was full of blinky ads and other things that were a really bad user experience, and how he kind of overcame that and built the Loop into what it is today. So the talks were very good, but I think even better than the talks was just the opportunity to meet a lot of people. One thing they did was something they called a dine around on Thursday night, where groups of about 12 or so were selected by the people at the conference to go out to dinner together at a local restaurant. So we went out into downtown Indianapolis and took over, I don't even know, probably at least 10 restaurants in the immediate area around the hotel and conference center, and got to just have a nice casual dinner with a bunch of interesting people. My group included Peter Olmvie, who makes the Sketch app, which is a vector drawing graph app that a lot of designers and developers use to make assets for their applications, as well as just a bunch of other people who have got one or two apps or doing consulting work from all over the country and really all around the world, because Peter's from Amsterdam. So that was it was a lot of fun.
That the dinner thing sounds like a really good idea actually. I can see how that it kind of brings you to chat to some people that maybe you wouldn't have spoken to otherwise, because it's kind of difficult at a conference. You kind of start chatting to the people that you already know, and it's easy to kind of get caught up in only talking to those people. The dinner idea sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it worked really well because it's just kind of human nature. I think you're in the middle of these talks. You have maybe 15 minutes to a half an hour between them when you can mingle and talk to people, which is great. But then everybody kind of goes back to where they started the day sitting. So you end up sitting at a table with usually the same people. Not always, and people I think did a pretty good job of mixing it up during the course of the day. But it did a even better job of getting people out, and actually I think every single person who was at the table I went to dinner with were people who I had not yet met at that point. And that was Thursday night, and it ended on Friday late in the day, but I stuck around till about Saturday at noon and went out to dinner Friday night with a group of people who I'd met while I was there, and it was a great time. And it was easy for me. It's only a 3-hour drive from where I live, so nice to not have to hop on a plane for once for one of these type things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's about it. I mean, one thing I thought we also should talk about today are the third-party watch bands, because I saw on Twitter that you were posting some pictures of some watch bands that you got. You got like a sports band and a cuff, right?
Yeah, I bought a little bit of kind of backstory on it. When they announced the is it pronounced Hermes? I think it's pronounced like that, but we'll carry on.
That works for me.
Yeah, when they announced that at the keynote, the Hermes had the 3 different bands they were releasing. There was the Tour, I think, the Double Tour, and the Cuff. And the Cuff looked like a really nice band. Of course, they only sell it, with an Apple Watch. So there was no way for me to buy one for my watch. Of course, it probably would have been crazy expensive anyway. So I'd kept an eye on eBay because I know there's a lot of Chinese manufacturers that build kind of replicas of these things. And eventually one of the Cuffs popped up on eBay, and it was £20, I think. And the seller had also had sport bands for £5 and a black Milanese loop kind of replica for £20 as well. So I ordered those 3, and I've had those probably about a week or so, and I've been testing them out.
So what do you? Let me ask you, I guess, first about the sports band. How does that one kind of compare to your regular sports band that you have?
Yeah, so I got the blue one, and in terms of colour, the match is kind of perfect. I don't think just at a glance you'd know any different. And it's clearly built to be exactly the same as the Apple one. Like the holes are all in the same place. It feels mostly the same. The Apple ones are feel a little bit sturdier, maybe a little bit thicker. And I've been wearing that for the most part over the other 2, and it's been pretty good. There's a little bit on the where you slide it in to the watch. It's maybe a little bit more loose than one of Apple's ones, but it still feels pretty secure. So for £5, it's pretty good.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a lot cheaper. How much do the regular sports bands cost, pounds wise? I mean, I know they're $50 here.
I think they're £40 here. So for £5 for something that's pretty close to it is pretty good.
Yeah, no, it seems like a really good option if people want to check it out. I haven't done that yet. I did buy an Apple one not long before I went to release notes, an orange one, matching my orange case, which is kind of fun. And it's Halloween today. Maybe I'll wear my orange one. I got to go dig it out. I think I misplaced it. I think it might be, I don't know, I'm probably in my suitcase still. But yeah, I'm not very good about unpacking. So I might wear that today. How about the cuff? So how's the quality of the leather and everything?
It's not great. I mean, I wasn't expecting a high luxury kind of band, but it really feels cheap. And I think the Milanese kind of has the same problem. They both just feel cheap. The Milanese. The material is fairly nice, but the edges are a little bit sharp. Not so sharp that they would cut you, but it rubbed when I think I wore it for like 2 days to kind of try it out, and it wasn't great. The Hermes cuff kind of replica, it really just didn't work for me. I kind of tried it on and I found it a bit uncomfortable because I had to wear the watch a little bit further up my arm because of the extra material on the band.
Right.
So yeah, neither of those were particularly good. I think Mike Hurley said about this on an episode of Upgrade recently that he's just going to stick to sport bands, and I think, to be honest, I'm going to do the same. I mean, the sport bands are just so comfortable that I'm just not willing to switch to something else, I don't think.
Yeah, no, they're really comfortable, and they're also just real versatile because, especially if you get, I don't know, I mean, you can find one that kind of goes with whatever outfit or occasion you're going to, and they're comfortable. You can exercise in them. They don't, as far as I can tell, they're virtually indestructible. I haven't had any issue with my black one that I've had since day one. So it'll be interesting to see with a colored one like the orange one, whether that starts looking worn or dirty at some point. But so far it's fine, but I've only worn it maybe a total of a few days at this point.
Yeah, see, I do have the, I think it was a pink they originally did with the first release. Now, I had one of those as well that I've had pretty much from launch. And I've probably worn it about 50% of the time. in rotation with my black one, and it doesn't it doesn't particularly look worn or dirty or anything like that. I mean, if it does get dirt on it, it's just a damp cloth kind of cleans it up, and it looks good as new.
Right. All right. Well, that's good. Well, we also probably ought to just move on at this point, unless you had anything else about the bands, and talk a little bit about Apple TV, because I know we're both pretty excited about that.
Yeah, I think we should probably move on to that, because I think we've both got a lot to say about the new Apple TV. So I guess I probably want to start with you, John, because you, although we haven't mentioned it, because you've been keeping quiet because of the NDA, but you've had one of the developer kits. You were in the first round, is that right?
Yeah, we were, and we've had it for about 6 weeks, and there really until a day ago there wasn't a whole lot to say about it, because the developer kits didn't have any of the third-party apps on them. So you had movies, TV shows, basically iTunes video, you had music, photos, just the built-in stuff, and Test Flight at one point that showed up so that you could test other people's apps. But the problem was, these were all in the hands of developers, so unless you knew a developer that was developing an Apple TV app, you didn't have a chance to really try that out. Although I did towards the very end, earlier this week, get a pre-release copy of pCalc to try out, which is a calculator app that's fantastic by James Thompson. And I don't know that I have a big need for a calculator on a television, but it's a very well done app. Really enjoyed testing it out. I think he did a really nice job with adapting the UI to the television set. So yeah, I've had it, and I've known about one of the big issues that we'll talk about, which is the lack of search across all of the services, the lack of Siri search in particular. The very early unit, the very first beta that we had, I don't think even had typing search for music. It only had, you were only able to navigate what was in the UI. You can search music now by typing in the characters using the remote, but that's super tedious and not a great way to find what you're looking for. Now, Apple, I think, has said that they're bringing that later. They're bringing Siri search to music, so that'll be a welcome addition. I guess do you want to focus on the hardware first, or what do you want to talk about?
Well, I think, seeing as you've brought it up with Siri search, I think it kind of leads in nicely to one of the biggest issues, I think. We'll get onto the niceties of the Apple TV in a minute, but I think one of the biggest problems, and I think everyone's going to find this, is typing on any input. I mean, most apps are going to have some kind of search input. You've got settings, you've got password things. And I think there's two things that have gone wrong here. The iOS remote app has not been updated to support the new Apple TV. So there's no way to use a keyboard to type, into an input, maybe an email address, or you're trying to search for a TV show or a movie or something like that. So there's no way to do that with a keyboard, which is just so infuriating. And of course, you mentioned Siri search. There's no way to dictate to an input box either, which seems like that would be a perfect fit for something, like Siri, where you could just say Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and it will just put that into the input box and it will find that TV show for you. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, I assume you've probably had very similar experience to me.
Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time playing around with Siri search when I first got the box. And I mean, I think just to roll back and focus on what has gone right, I think the Siri search is excellent. I mean, it does a fantastic job of finding what you're looking for. The problem is that it's so good that when you don't have it, you really feel it. And as you said, there's no good way to input text. So it works great when you're trying to find a movie. And even in music, there's some things you can do. And I think this is tied to the accessibility features. So if you're in music, you can say things like play, pause. I don't think next track works because it doesn't understand what a track is, because that's a contextual thing with music. But if there are commands you can do with music that would also work for television shows or movies, those will work in the music. But that's all, and it's very limited. And the Siri search is, you can do as a demo when they announced it. You can say, show me I don't know, show me comedies starring, Neil Patrick Harris or something like that, and it'll bring up all the shows that have him. But if you try to search for music and say, show me Taylor Swift, it'll bring up Taylor Swift videos, but it won't bring up any music. And it's going to have an awareness of context, I think, in order to get that right more times than not. So if you're in the music app, it strikes me you should only be searching music. If you're in the videos app, you should only be searching the videos. Right now, what's been implemented is the universal search that searches across all the services, which is great for video. But once you throw things like music in the mix, it could start getting confusing how you organize it. I guess you could return results in categories like music, video, TV shows, movies, that sort of thing. But there might be some challenges there as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I'm sure that Apple have, heard about this from customers in the last day. But, I'm sure they're working on it. And, I've got faith that they'll, at least if nothing else, update the remote app to allow kind of keyboard input. And as you say, maybe some more Siri understanding context a little bit better in terms of what you're doing, to be able to, as you say, search in music when you're in music and that kind of thing. So...
Yeah, I've been really happy with it overall. I mean, I think it's a great start. I do think it is an oversight not to have the remote app ready to go. But there are I think there's a lot of little software things that we're going to talk about that are very 1.0 and need a little refinement. But I think at its core, it works very well. And I've been pretty pleased with it. It's funny though, without the third-party apps, we had not been using it a whole lot as an Apple TV at our house because, I mean, one of the things we use an awful lot on Apple TV is Netflix, and we just didn't have that available. So we've had it set up in our basement down here where I'm podcasting right now. And, I'd watched a couple shows on it, listened to some music, fiddled around with it, but mostly it just sat there. And when, Owen was working on his King Me Checkers app, which we'll talk about a little later, we just hook up his laptop to the Apple TV, and that's what it was for. It was really just a development box more than anything else for us.
Yeah, it's interesting that I think it's a much better experience now that when you turn it on, you don't have things like Netflix and HBO and NFL and all of these other apps that were kind of pre-installed. You really can just choose what it is that you want, download the apps. You don't have to have anything extra that you really don't need.
Yes, people will be complaining very soon that there aren't folders, is my prediction, because if they download enough apps, it starts getting a little crowded on the screen to scroll through it all. But you can organize them, you can move them around. You have I think it's long press on the play button that starts them wiggling like on a phone or an iPad, and then you can move them around to different locations on the screen, which is nice. What do you think of the hardware? Like, what do you think of the remote?
The remote's nice. It's nice to have the trackpad at the top there. I think that takes a little bit of getting used to. And something that I found that improved it was going into the settings and putting the sensitivity up to fast. That kind of tended to reflect more what I was expecting to see on the screen when I swiped.
Yeah, that was a real big challenge in developing for it, because there's a real disconnect between what you're doing on the remote and the TV, because you're not manipulating the device itself. I mean, you're looking at a screen and moving your thumb around on a remote control that's very small compared to the television set, so it can be very hard to kind of dial in how you're going to set that sensitivity when you're doing an app. Yeah,
definitely. One of the other things that I found with the remote, which is just fantastic for me, is I managed to set it up so that the volume will adjust my speakers, because I have extra, I have external speakers I don't use my TV speakers. So now, once I've turned the TV on, because I don't have CEC support on my TV, I can't turn it on with the Apple TV remote, but I can at least pause and play, which I could do before, but I can also adjust the volume without having to get the remote for the speakers as well, which is just makes the experience infinitely better to be able to do that.
Yeah, I did the same thing, and it's really nice. It's definitely a nice feature. One thing I noticed too, which I haven't seen mentioned very many places, is that we weren't using for our old Apple TV, we weren't using the remote anymore. We had programmed in the IR codes into a universal remote, a Logitech universal remote. And that remote still works with the existing Apple TV. It does have an IR sensor, and while you can't swipe, you can use, like a directional pad, play, pause, all that stuff. It all still just works, which is nice if all you're doing is, navigating around to Netflix and starting up a movie or something and not playing the game.
Yeah, it's nice to just kind of have, one remote to do, multiple things. I mean, to be honest, I'm now considering buying a new TV that's got CEC support. I think it's CEC it's called, so that I can turn my TV on with the Apple TV remote, just to make that even easier.
I've heard that's very spotty in how well it works, because did you hear they talked about it on ATP a couple of times, and including the most recent episode, because they pointed out that in, I think it was Walt Mossberg's review that was on The Verge, or no, it wasn't on The Verge, it was on the Recode, and he said that worked for him for the first couple of days and then just stopped working altogether.
Yeah, it does concern me. I mean, it's not something I'm kind of, actively seeking out. But I think if I do buy a new TV anytime soon, I'll at least try to find one that has that feature. So we've mentioned it a couple of times, but I'd like to talk about it, and I'm sure you would as well. You and your son Owen have released King Me on the Apple TV. How's that been? On the release?
It's been pretty cool. I mean, this is all Owen. I did not develop this one at all myself, although I helped with a lot of in the last stages of development, kind of working with him on some of the 3D modeling and figuring out the UI and the lighting, because it's all done in SceneKit, which is kind of a 3D API for doing things like games in Coco. And he didn't use any of the built-in Focus or other special APIs that they have for the Apple TV. He kind of built it from the ground up, and it's been really nice. I mean, the hard thing is that it's hard to find, because the search on the Apple Store or the Apple TV Store is awful at the moment. But putting the app together was good. He used, as I said, he used SceneKit. It was very busy while I was down in Indianapolis, because that's when they announced that they were taking developer submissions, and we were working with Frank Towers at that point to help with putting together the icon and the top shelf image. Top shelf images are huge. If you put your app in the top row and then you select it, you get this big image that takes up about 2/3 of your television, or at least top half of your television. And Frank did an amazing job coming up with an icon and a top shelf image, and it looks fantastic. And I think it really stands out well in the store. But it was hard to get. I think the reason you see I think it's been estimated there's maybe 1,000 apps on the Apple TV Store right now. And one reason there's not more is that people just didn't have that much time. And we had about 6 weeks, and Owen cranked it out and got it just barely done in time. And it was approved just, I guess the day before the store went live, or 2 days before the store went live. So that was a fairly intense few weeks, especially at the very end there.
Yeah, I mean, it's genuinely is impressive. I mean, you can tell in that from me. It was once I installed the Apple TV and got it all set up. It was the first thing that I installed, because you'd very kindly given me a promo code, so it was already in my purchased list. And yeah, me and my girlfriend, we sat there and we played a game. I can definitely see the value in, if nothing else, getting a controller, so we don't have to keep passing the remote back and forth. But in terms of gameplay and design, as you say, Frank did an amazing job with the icon and stuff. It's genuinely is a good game. I would say we'll put a link in the show notes, but we can't, because links don't go anywhere to Apple TV apps. So if you search for King Me in the App Store, you should be able to find it.
Yeah, the K category is fairly small. You can even just type in K and then scroll through. But if you get to like KIN or so, it at least at the moment it filters it down well enough that you'll spot it right off, because the icon is a big profile of a big red checker. It's King Me in the King Me words right in the center. So yes, it is just a traditional checkers game. It was really interesting going from a prototype that had very simple graphics graphics to coming up with 3D models. We actually bought a 3D checker from a stock 3D, 3D image, stock photo website, which was new experience for me. And then a lot of the sound effects were recorded with this microphone that I'm podcasting with, except for when you get kinged. If you get across the board and your piece is kinged, we did also purchase some fanfare, so you get a little trumpet fanfare when you do that, and a little banner that pops up. And those were all things that were kind of done at the very last minute, because it took a long time just to get the gameplay right. Moving around the board was a little hard to get right with the small remote. Going diagonally is very difficult, and we tried a lot of different things, and I think Owen got the gameplay got it right, but it was that was probably the biggest challenge in putting the app together.
Yeah, that was one of the issues when we were playing it, and I don't think it's not just a King Me exclusive issue. I mean, I think it genuinely it is just an issue across the Apple TV. Is that the trackpad is nice for a lot of things, for swiping through a grid and things like that, but I feel like there's still something nice about having the physical kind of left, right, up, down of the old Apple TV remote. I mean, I guess maybe I could try that next time I play it. I'll grab the other remote from the old Apple TV, and my girlfriend can use that one, and I'll use the new one, and maybe that'll work.
Yeah, I don't know if that works, but we did get a controller last night, and it does work with the controller. It needs to be, it needs to be tuned a little bit to. I think we can take advantage of some of the features of a controller for if people use the game with that, and so that Owen's going to be working on that. But it does, the basics do work, which is good. It's one thing you can do is there are really three ways to move around. Well, three inputs. There's click, which is pressing down until you get the physical click, and it's a mechanical click. It's not like force touch. Or you can swipe, which is, I think, what the natural inclination to do is when you're playing a game like checkers. But it's also very imprecise, and that's where doing diagonals is very difficult. I mean, I've gotten good at it because I was helping test the app for so long. But even with building in a lot of forgiveness for the angle at which your thumb's moving, it can be still kind of hit or miss as to whether you get to exactly where you want. The easiest way really is to just do taps, because you can tap left, right, up, down on the remote and do as you said, which is the moving in the X and Y or along those axes. So you can tap two to the left, two up, and that takes you to the spot.
You're blowing my mind, John. I didn't know you could tap on the touchpad.
Yeah, you can. You just tap it instead of pressing down, and it does. Once you get used to it, it works. It works a little better than the swiping, I think. Even when you're just on the main screen and moving from app to app, because I find that swiping, I overshoot it a lot of the times.
That would have been significantly more useful last night, but that's a good tip. Actually, I did not know that. And on the topic, you mentioned the fanfare when a piece is kinged in the app. This is just a great moment in the game when that happens, and the music and the icon kind of swipes into the screen. That really was a nice touch, and that's just a genuinely nice piece of kind of design to see.
Well, thanks. That was that was a suggestion from Frank. I mean, Frank has a great instinct for UI and user experience, and he actually came up. He suggested the name, so he gets credit for that as well. It's always nice having him involved in a project, because he always comes up with some nice little touches that are the little bits that take it beyond where it is and makes it actually an enjoyable product. And since this was our first game, it was just really nice to have him involved and add that little bit of flair at the end that makes it a more enjoyable game.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely shows that you've had the input from somebody. Frank really has got an eye for these touches. So we've talked about King Me, and we've kind of mentioned a couple of different apps. I should probably mention a kind of side project of mine that I've done. I've atvapps.net. It's a Tumblr blog where I'm going to be, or I have started already, kind of posting not necessarily, the most popular apps, but kind of interesting apps that show up and ones that, maybe aren't featured or you maybe haven't heard of before. So yeah, if you go to atvapps.net, or we're at _ atvapps on Twitter, I'm kind of posting a few different apps there.
Yeah, I thought that was a brilliant idea. I mean, and it's turned out to be even more valuable than, when we first talked about it, I thought, oh, this is great because there's just nothing like this. But then it turns out that the search is so difficult on the Apple TV that having a site like that is great. The only limitation, which is through no fault of your own, is that you can't link people to a store where they can go buy this stuff. At best, you can link, I guess, if they're universal apps, you can link to the store because they'll be in the iOS. I guess I don't even know what they would call it now. I guess just the regular app store, or the developer's website. Like when we talked about KingMe, I mean, it's been super frustrating for me to be there on day one and not have KingMe be discoverable because it's not on the front page and it's not likely to be on the front page. And I just know from using it myself that there's a lot of friction to going in and searching for something, and I just think the majority of people are going to scroll around that front page and not even realize that there are other apps on the store besides those, whatever it is, maybe 50 or so they're showing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the way I kind of, maybe we'll talk about what apps we've installed in a minute, but, the way I found some of the apps that I've installed, I went through and searched for every single letter of the alphabet, and I would, do A, scroll through the list, get to B, scroll through the list, and to the best of my knowledge, I have looked at every single app that's in the store. And I don't think a lot of people are going to do that because it's a frustrating experience, again, with the input and the text and stuff.
Right. That's going to work for a little while, like it did when the App Store first launched, when there's a finite number of apps, but that's not going to last. I mean, before long, there will be, instead of being 1,000 apps, there'll be tens of thousands of apps, and you'll never be able to really accomplish that. And I felt the frustration just the other day because I was following the Twitter account that you set up for atvapps.net, and I saw one that I wanted to download, but I wasn't home. I was in Chicago, and I could set myself a reminder for when you get home, go and search for this because Robb linked to it, but I don't have any way to take that link and buy it on my phone and have it just show up on my Apple TV when I get home or something like that.
Yeah, I've started it. I've included iTunes links on any of the posts where I can, if those iTunes links are available. In the hope that maybe web previews or buying in iTunes will appear at some point, but right now it doesn't look like that's happening. So what apps have you installed then, John? I know you've been playing a few games, and obviously you've gone out on the controller as well.
Right. Right before I get to that, though, one thing that's really interesting is I have a link. I have an iTunes link to KingMe. They are in iTunes Connect, and I originally put them on the Squibner.com website. But what they do is they open up iTunes and then it gives you an error. So I took those all down. I assumed that they were going to go live when the store went live, but they haven't gone live yet. I'm hoping that that's still going to happen because I don't. Why else would they give you a link that opens up iTunes? And as you can redeem promo codes through iTunes.
That works perfectly. As I said, you gave me a promo code for KingMe probably 3 or 4 days ago, and I redeemed it in iTunes on the Mac. It redeemed. I did check the files, and it definitely didn't download the app anywhere. It's not backing them up in iTunes or anything like that. But when I got to purchase on the Apple TV, there it was. So there's obviously some mechanism in the App Store to be able to do that, but there's just no UI to reflect it.
Yeah, I haven't seen whether it's still doing this since the store launched, but I did give a promo code to one person who redeemed it on their iPad, and it installed KingMe on their iPad, which didn't work. The app didn't work, and it was a blank icon because it's a different size icon than is compatible with an iPad, and it had the person had to delete it and then I think actually restart their iPad in order to get it for the icon to disappear, which you would have thought maybe somebody would have thought of that, but it is iOS, so I guess it can be installed on an iPad. Maybe you would think there'd be a flag in there or something to stop that, but so talking about apps, let's see. I think I already mentioned I have pCalc. which is James Thompson's ubiquitous calculator app, which is just everywhere. He's got it on, on the Mac and iOS, iPad, and iPhone, and it's a great calculator app. And it's there's a basic version of it for Apple TV. I really enjoyed it. I think it's well designed. It works well. I don't have a ton of uses for a calculator, but when I do, there it is. Then last night, the last 2 nights, I've downloaded, we did what you did, I think, is we went through our purchase tab first and looked to see what was in there. And there was a bunch of games that are universal with things we already had on iOS. So we downloaded those. And that includes Alto's Adventure, Cannibalt, Crossy Road, Asphalt 8, those games. And it's a lot of fun. I enjoy the games. I think things like, Crossy Road, Cannibalt, and Alto's Adventure all share a super simple game mechanic, and I think that kind of simple input makes a big difference for a game like this. These aren't games that are going to take over the console world or anything, but it is kind of fun to have them in your living room and just play a casual game from time to time. Playing Asphalt 8 though really made me want to get a controller, which I did do last night, which we can talk about in a little bit. But Asphalt 8 uses the gyroscope in the remote, and you hold it sideways and steer that way. But the thing is so small and light that it's a really, I don't know, it's definitely a lacking in terms of the experience. I didn't like it at all, and the controller is much better for games like that.
Yeah, I thought the same thing actually with Asphalt, because I felt like, especially on kind of tight corners and things, it was very difficult to kind of keep the remote in balance. And you mentioned Crossy Road. I had played that a while ago on a TV, because it comes with the Fire TV stick, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And so, like you say, I kind of had the same reaction where I was like, well, I'm probably not going to sit here and play this for 5 hours, but it is fun to, just to jump up a fun little game like that, play it for 10 minutes or even an hour. It is nice to see these apps, on the TV.
Have you seen any word games? I doubt Letterpress is going to come to this because I don't know that that's being actively developed right now, but any kind of, word games with tiles or anything like that? Because it seems to me that might be a natural fit.
Yeah, I did think that. I didn't see anything. I'll be honest, I kind of ignored some apps that just looked like they had kind of terrible icons and kind of didn't look very good. But I certainly didn't see anything, like a Words with Friends or, something similar like that. I certainly haven't seen anything like that yet on the store.
Yeah, it seems to me there's an opportunity for that there. And I guess you've downloaded. I'm looking at your list in our show notes. It looks like you've downloaded a lot. I see Up Next in there. Did you get that working?
Yeah, I did actually. I had a little bit of a problem. I'm not really sure quite what happened. I have emailed the developers and let them know what happened. But there's a couple of little things in the UI where if you've already added a show, it doesn't indicate that to you. And I'd added a show 3 times by accident. And then so then when I tried to delete the show, it would just crash the app. So I actually had to go into my iCloud management and delete the data and start again. But yeah, Up Next is a kind of a TV tracking app. It will give you a schedule of the shows that you watch that are coming up next, hence the name, which is quite nice. Simplex is the Plex client. I think we've mentioned this a couple of times on the show, and I've used quite a lot of different kind of Plex clients. I've used the Mac one, and I've tried I think it was the Apple TV jailbreak one a while ago. There's an iPhone version. Simplex is incredibly fast and so good. I feel like this is maybe a combination of it just being a few years since I've used a Plex client, because I've been using Kodi recently, and just the Apple TV just being so good. But this really is a fantastic Plex client. If you're the kind of person that needs a Plex client for the Apple TV.
Yeah, it looks like your list here. I've tried a couple of these other ones too. I did try Speed Test, which is it's nice. I mean, works works as advertised, tells you how fast your connection is to the internet. Do you have your Apple TV hooked up to Ethernet cable? That's what I did.
Yeah, I've got it hooked up to Ethernet, so I've got cables all going around the back of my TV for all my various boxes. But yeah, as you say, speed test is nice. If nothing else, just to know you're definitely getting, what you would expect to the device. A couple of other ones, Mashable. I didn't really see a lot of mention of this, but I saw on the store. And this kind of has all their, video reviews and introductions and to various different products and stuff. And it was actually where I watched the Christina Warren's review of the Apple TV. I watched it in the Mashable app on the Apple TV, which was quite nice.
Oh, that's interesting. I'll have to check that out. I hadn't run across that one yet.
Yeah, and the only other one, I didn't particularly find anything that I hadn't already heard of while I was searching. There was one, though, Public Domain Movies, is quite interesting. This is an app that is kind of a directory of all these films, from the 30s and 40s that have kind of hit... They're out of their copyright. I don't know what you'd call it, but they're public domain. You don't need any copyright to show them or download them or anything. And I kind of had a little look through, and there's quite a lot of movies on there. So if you're into kind of old movies like that, there's quite a lot of content in there to take a look at.
So does it stream, or do you download it, or how does it work?
It streams by the looks of it. I tried a couple just to see how it works, and it looked like it was streaming. I've been checking out my storage on the Apple TV every now and again just to see what's going on, because I bought 32 because I just couldn't see a reason for 64. But yeah, it seems to be streaming from that particular app.
How's your storage looking? Because we got a 32 also. I mean, that's what the developer kits were. So really wasn't any choice there. And I can't say that we've downloaded a lot of apps yet, but storage seems to be fine so far.
Yeah, I mean, it has been for me as well. I think the only app that I've really had that's downloading anything in the background or after the fact is Asphalt, and that downloads the tracks as you play them. And to be honest, for me, that's been fine. But I do know that I'm quite lucky to have particularly fast internet where I am, because I'm quite close to the exchange, so I get significantly better internet connection than a lot of people. But yeah, Asphalt's the only one that I've seen that's actually been downloading content in the background on top of its 200 meg limit to begin with.
Yeah, that's the only one I've noticed as well, and it's as you said. I mean, it's not when it downloads a track, it's not that bad. Although I'm getting 80 megabytes down, so it doesn't take that long.
Yeah, it sounds like your internet's very similar to mine, but I have seen a few people tweeting that the tracks are taking a minute or even two to download on their internet connection, which I can imagine is significantly more frustrating, than what we've been used to on iOS and, even on the Mac and game consoles and stuff, where you just download the whole game and you're ready to go.
Yeah, I have noticed that video starts up very, very fast, especially the Netflix app. You used to have to wait for a while it buffered, and you had a spinner for a while before some show would play, even on a fast internet connection. And now it seems like it plays almost instantaneously. Yeah,
that's kind of the. I think maybe that's kind of what's impressing me about Simplex as well. Now, I don't know. Maybe the APIs are better on the Apple TV than they previously were, or something. But
yeah, and the hardware too, right? The hardware with the whatever video encoders they have and decoders.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as you say, everything just seems to load really, really quickly. Whether it's Netflix or Simplex, which is obviously that's loading a file across my network. That seems fine as well. So yeah, it genuinely is just an impressive device, I think.
What about GIF TV? I saw you. I haven't looked at that one yet either, and I saw you added that just pretty recently to the notes.
This was one that I installed, opened up, and my girlfriend kind of just gave me a look as if to say, "What on earth are you doing?" GIF TV. There's actually two in the App Store as well, both called GIF TV. The one that I've downloaded, which I'd heard about first, was called has a kind of an old TV static kind of background if you're looking for it. We'll pop the developer's website in the show notes. But GIF TV, it takes the top 100 GIFs from Giphy.com and just loops through them on your TV. It's kind of like a screensaver, I guess. You can favorite GIFs, and that will give you a favorites feed, so you can switch over to that. And it'll also do like random as well. It's not particularly useful, but it's an interesting use of the new hardware.
Yeah, another one that I downloaded that I saw you linked to very early was Streaks, which is just a simple workout app. So I figured if I downloaded that to my TV, I'd automatically get in good shape. That's pretty much how that works, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah, I think you can get your money back if it doesn't. That's not a problem.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was $3, so it was worth doing. I mean, I like I said, I will admit I downloaded it, looked at a couple screens, and shut it off to play a game. So I haven't tried it for a workout yet, but it looked like a nice app in terms of just a variety of different kinds of exercises you can do. And I don't even know if it tracks what you do, but it looks nice.
Yeah, again, I think that was an interesting use case that I don't think a lot of people had thought of previously. And the last app I wanted to mention is this is not available in the App Store right now, and won't be, but it's called Auntie Player, and this is a BBC iPlayer app that a couple of people built at a hack day a couple of weeks ago now. And I've installed it, and I had to install it through Xcode, and there was a few kind of signing issues and naming issues and things like that. But I managed to get it installed on the Apple TV, just by plugging in through the USB port. But this is another one of these apps that BBC iPlayer has famously never been on the Apple TV.
Right.
Their solution always was, just AirPlay it from the iPhone or the iPad, which is obviously not the best solution in the world. But Auntie Player for now is great, and the BBC have said that an official version will be coming soon. And it is possible that the app I'm using, it may just stop working because they're kind of using private APIs and things like that. So it's not ideal, but right now it works, and it's a nice kind of show of probably what we can expect from the BBC iPlayer app, certainly in the UK anyway. I know they've said they're working on a kind of outside the UK version where you can pay, but there hasn't been any movement on that right now.
Yeah, I do know if Auntie Player works outside of the UK.
I honestly don't know. It may be worth trying. It's not too fiddly. I mean, you're a developer. You'd be able to get this installed, no problem. I have set my DNS so that I can get American Netflix, and that works fine. So it's possible that the BBC iPlayer might work outside of the UK. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, it looks interesting. I mean, I think that's you'll never see that particular player on the store, I don't think, just because the BBC would probably shut it down. But if you have some experience with Xcode, it might be worth checking out and seeing how it works, because I think, as you said, it's a little fiddly. I mean, Xcode is fiddly by its very nature. So, I mean, I suppose in that sense, it's not for the faint of heart to go download Xcode and try to install this on your television. But you don't have to write any code. You just have to get all the settings right in order for it to compile and see your Apple TV and then transfer over to your Apple TV.
Yeah, as I say, as you say as well, it's a little bit fiddly, but if that's something that you're interested in and want to try out, we'll pop a link in the show notes as well. So we wanted to, or certainly you wanted to, and I've got a few questions for you about it, but Squibner is now a year old, is that right, today?
Yeah, today, I mean, it's funny because you and I, we normally record on a Sunday, but you're getting together with some friends tomorrow, so we decided to move the recording up to Saturday. Plus, with the Apple TV out, we were both excited to start talking about it, and I was looking around. I don't know what actually triggered it in my mind. Maybe it's that it's my wedding anniversary, and I knew that I was doing this about 1 year ago today, too, so I thought I'd talk a little bit about Squibner, where it came from, and kind of where it's going.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting, actually. And you say it kind of started in 2008. I mean, you work as a lawyer by day. where did this, how did you get into, iOS development and programming and stuff like that? I mean, it's, you're talking 2008 was kind of 7 years ago. I mean, what kind of got you into it?
Yeah, I'm actually late to the whole company. It started out really as Owen's thing, entirely Owen's thing, although I was along for the ride and helping out as we went. So, my original developer's account wasn't a Squibner developer account. It was a John Voorhees developer account, because Owen was too young to have a developer account. I think you have to be 18. So he was 11 and wanted to learn how to program, and iOS, SDK, it was the iPhone SDK back then, had just come out, and not really knowing any better, I pointed him in the direction of that and said, here, bang your head against this wall for a while and see if you can figure it out. And after many, many months, he did. Those days were very difficult because I think for like the first 9 months, the SDK was under an NDA. So developers couldn't write about it. They weren't supposed to talk about it. And the only way that's where I think Twitter came in really handy, because the only place people felt comfortable talking about it was on Twitter. And those days, I think if you were already a Mac developer, you had a leg up because you understood kind of the basic APIs that were involved with the phone. Or if maybe you were in the jailbreak community and you had figured out what the APIs were before they were officially released, you had some ability to make an app. But for the most part, it was a very difficult process because there were no books, there were no videos, there were no tutorials, there were no websites, there was nothing at all. So the first part of when this all started, it was mostly me looking for resources for him. And over the years, he released 3 or 4 apps. And I started dabbling in it here and there, probably by 2010, 2011. And it just didn't really take for me. I went at it as a lawyer might go at this kind of problem by reading books. And those are useful, but they're not really sufficient to figure out how to write an application. I mean, they're very good for the basics and getting an overview of how the APIs work and that sort of thing. But really, it wasn't until I dove in and actually had a project that I wanted to complete that I figured out, how to actually create something. So that's, but that's me. I mean, for the longest time, this Squibner was really nothing but Owen's thing. And the name's been there for a long time. It's just a made up word. And we came up with that primarily because, it's easy to spell. It's hard to mess up Squibner. So it's, I don't know. It doesn't mean anything other than it popped into my head one day and it seemed to work. It's kind of a strange name, but works for me.
So you mentioned that you kind of tackled it in a lawyer way that you might, by reading the books and things like that. Had you had any, programming experience previous to this, in any language or anything like that, or was this purely, you were helping Owen, build his apps, and then you kind of just wanted to get into it a little bit more as well?
Yeah, no, I had no experience. It was ground up for me, learning from scratch. I think it helped that I started out by just kind of trying to find things for him and coming up with projects for him, because the first thing he did was like a flashcard application for kids who were learning math. And that was an idea that I helped him develop because it struck me as easy, both from a UI standpoint and just in terms of coding it and coming up with the mathematics and whatnot. It was, and it turned out I was right. I think he figured it out, and it did really well. There's a lot of interesting stories about those early days because he was a pretty young kid, and there was a lot of human interest stories surrounding the fact that he was doing that. But so yeah, at the beginning, it was just me finding the resources for him, and then as I think probably one of the first projects I did was a command line project. I made an app that integrated with Status Board by Panic that went and scraped information off of our local electric company's website and posted what the current price for electricity was, because we're in a program where we pay basically hourly price for electricity, which saves money if you can shift your use of electricity when it's cheaper. So I created a status board that would create a graph showing what the prices were, and that was a very simple project that was just pulling down this data, manipulating it, and then displaying it through status board.
Yeah, status board. Now you bring it up is a nice. I can imagine is a nice way to get into it, because they're relatively simple in terms of what you need to pass the status board. So yeah, I can see how that would be a good start. So what Blink wasn't your first app that you actually built for the App Store, was it?
No, it wasn't. Let me think about timing of all this. So let's see. It was the end of 2014 when we started Squibner up, and it was, God, now I'm forgetting the timing of all this. Oh, it was the beginning of 2014, and I had been in 2013. I went to WWC with Owen because he got a scholarship, student scholarship to attend WWC, and that's probably where I guess I really, I had dabbled a little bit before that, but then that's where it really took for me, because I met a bunch of developers, hung around with them, and I was able to go into Moscone with Owen, but I couldn't go into any of the sessions. I was kept in like a parent's holding pen, which was super frustrating for me. So I was walking around. I could see, I think that was when the Mac Pro came out. I could go see it in the glass case, and I could see everything in the open areas and grab snacks and use their amazing, Wi-Fi and internet connections, but I couldn't go to any of the sessions. So I would hang around for a while in the parent pen, and then I would go out and meet people and take Owen places, like the Chieftain, where all the developers hang out. And we met a lot of people there, and that's actually where I met Matt Alexander and Mike Hurley for the first time. And I was familiar with some of Mike's podcasts, but I wasn't not at that point, I guess, a regular listener. It was around the time he moved over to 5x5. And one that I really that caught on for me right after that was Bionic. I started listening to that, and I thought, there was a lot of that show had a lot of, I guess, fan involvement. People, Frank Towers making art for the show, you making a drink generator, Joe Steele writing fake scripts for movies and TV shows. And so I thought, you know what, I could make a soundboard for this. I could take clips of Mike and Matt and put them in an app, and that shouldn't be too hard. That'd be a good project. So I started working on that. And so my first app, it's not my first app. There's another one that's not available anymore, which was an awful app, which I'll get to in a second, I guess. But the first one that's still there right now is Volcanoer, which is just a simple set of buttons that allow you to play the suspense accents, which are built into GarageBand, and then a random clip generator in the middle that you can tap and listen to various funny things that those guys said during that podcast. So that kind of got me started. Yeah,
that was a fun one. I mean, I think at the time when that came out, I don't think me and you had chatted at that point. But I remember downloading it and I was like, oh, this is great. I can annoy people with the sounds, which much to my girlfriend's dismay, I did constanteply.
Yeah, I really got to find the time to update it, because embarrassingly, it's not updated for the larger phones. Stephen Hackett still gives me grief about that every now and then. And I really want to do it for the watch, so you can sneak up behind somebody and play the clip using your watch.
Please do that, John, please.
I got to find the time. Maybe this winter, because it's cold here in Chicago, and I'll just be curled up in the basement all winter long and working on the next iteration of Volcanoer. I actually did one app before that for a short time, which was Owen has one called Log My Run, which is just a really simple logbook for runners to track, the exercises they do, the runs that they do. It doesn't have GPS or anything like that, but it's like a diary in a sense, and it generates graphs of your progress and so forth. But I did a bit of a companion app at one point. It was just a pace calculator. You could, put in distance. It basically solved for whatever variable you didn't put into it in terms of pace. How long would it take me? How fast would I be going if I ran 10K in 40 minutes? That sort of thing. And it was not a good app. It was a free app. It wasn't very good. I tried iAds at first. That was kind of a disaster because iAds don't work unless you have hundreds of thousands of downloads. I think I made maybe 40 cents. And eventually I just didn't want to support it anymore, and I took it off the store. But that was my very first one. And there was a big gap between that and doing the Volcano app. But I had more time on my hands, started in 2014. And so I used that time to try to figure out Volcano, and very quickly from there started thinking about what the next thing would be. And that's what led me ultimately to Blink, which I started, I guess I started it probably sometime in 2014, basically right after I released Volcano. I started Blink, and I worked on it for a while. Went to WWC, talked to a lot of people about it, got really mixed reviews as to whether that was something people would want or use. Decided it was still worth taking the plunge, kept coding it, completely threw it out in September of 2014 because Apple had released the split view controllers, which I knew would make it a lot easier for me to support both iPhone and iPad. So I threw out all the UI code and started from scratch, and then just kind of cranked it out from the fall of 2014 until this past March when it actually came out. And along the way, I guess it was sometime in the fall last year when I decided, should we kind of take this thing pro, as I like to think of it, which was the decision to, we got to have a real company, we got to have a real legal entity, we got to take this seriously, we got to put some money into it, ought to start thinking about marketing and all those sorts of things.
So what? How's it been since you released Blink? From my opinion, I've seen, every time you do, a big update, I see, a fair amount of coverage for it, Mac stories and things like that.
Done very well. I couldn't be happier with how it's gone. It's got a relatively small but very dedicated user base. And I've thought about maybe expanding it out to the Mac. That's a possibility that I might do in the future. I think that would, there would be even more use if it had a Mac component to it. It's been fantastic. You have to kind of define for yourself what success looks like on a project. And with the way the state of iOS right now, financial success, you're going to be very frustrated if you put out an app and hope that it's going to, your first app's going to be one that lets you quit your job and make you hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's just not going to happen, except maybe once in a million times. But the learning that I've done, learning how to code in Cocoa and build the business and the marketing, that all has been super valuable. And it kind of goes to something that I think David Smith said during his talk, which is, his whole point was find your superpower. And his superpower, as he put it, was that he knows how to do just enough work to have a successful app without doing too much work. He talked about how when he was in high school, he knew how to get an A, but just barely an A. So he didn't have to do the extra work. And that comes in real handy when you're someone like him who has dozens of apps on the store, because he's only one guy and he needs to use his time really wisely in order to keep all those balls in the air at one time. One thing that I've benefited from, at first I viewed the day job as kind of a liability, and it is in some sense because, in order to make these apps, I get up at 5 a.m. and code for a while, and then I take some time at lunch, and I do it again at night. And I juggle various things, the marketing and other parts of the business along the way. And that's hard. On the other hand, I have the advantage that I have a steady income outside of making apps. And I do use that to my advantage. We've basically poured every dollar that we've made this year back into some sort of marketing, which I think I think far too often that sort of thing is ignored by developers, and they need to think about it more, because even if it doesn't result in dollar for dollar sales, there is a benefit to raising awareness. As you said, I mean, you've noticed Blink getting a lot of coverage, and part of it, that's not by mistake. I mean, it's written about by websites because they like it, but I make sure they know about it through a number of different channels, just writing to them. But we've also sponsored podcasts, we've sponsored websites, we've done a bunch of other things to try to raise awareness of both Blink, but also some of the other apps that we've got.
Yeah, I think you've done as you say, you've poured a lot of money into, marketing as well. And I think, that's good because, as I say, like I hear about it on podcasts, or, I see it on a website being written about, or, being sponsored to websites and things like that. And it sounds like you're doing what I would expect somebody to do. I mean, I do hear some, as you say, some developers, maybe they forget about the marketing side of it and just hope that they can just dump it in the App Store and it will get found. But, I think we both know that's not very likely to happen. What are the plans for the future? I mean, you mentioned the possibly a Mac version of Blink. I mean, I guess maybe that's probably as far as you can take Blink in terms of platforms. Have you got any other kind of apps in the pipeline, or are you just focusing on Blink right now?
Right, I think we're going to focus on Blink for another 12 months or so. I mean, it's going to need to be, it's going to continue to be supported for whatever changes there are to the iPhone and the APIs, so that it's continues to be a modern app. So, I mean, that'll continue to happen. I'm getting to the point with the iOS version that I don't think that there's going to be, until there's some sort of API change or something, there aren't going to be that many changes. So, I think I may try the Mac. No promises, but I may bring it over to the Mac possibly. And I've got some other ideas for kind of spreading the word about affiliate linking to other industries beyond. I mean, I think developers understand it. I think bloggers understand it, but I think more podcasters could benefit from using affiliate linking, and other types of people. And so, I mean, that's probably been the biggest challenge with that app, is that before you even get to explain to someone why they should spend $5 on your app, you have to explain to them what the affiliate program is. It doesn't get a lot of attention, I think, in a lot of quarters. So I think I'm going to spend some time this next year also just trying to raise awareness a little bit about the benefits of affiliate linking on iTunes as a way of driving sales of the existing app.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. I mean, as you say, what you mentioned earlier, that right now the app has a fairly small but dedicated market, and if you can get some more people on board with affiliate linking and things like that, then yeah, that'd be great. And I think that takes us to the end of the Squibner section.
Yeah. If we ever get links to these Apple TV apps, you can use your affiliate code for that.
Well, yeah. To be fair, that was a little bit disappointing, and still is right now, because that was kind of part of the point of it was I could link to the apps and maybe make a little bit of money. But I'm going to continue doing it because I think it is a useful resource for people.
Yeah, and hopefully that'll show up in the next, I don't know, week, 2 weeks, whatever it might show up, and then you can kind of swap out those links so people can go straight to the store, which would be great, and maybe make a little money along the way for your efforts, which is definitely appreciated, because I really like the site. It's been really great. One last thing, I wanted to back up for a second. You mentioned discoverability in the store. It's really interesting. I was talking to the Relay guys at Release Notes, and their app was live and on the store for, I think, about 24 hours before they actually announced it publicly via their blog and their shows and whatnot. And I asked them how many people found it and downloaded it, and I think it was fewer. I think they said it was fewer than 10. I mean, it was definitely just a handful, and that just gives you an idea. I mean, that was an app that had been announced, just that it was in the works months before, and got a fair amount of excitement going around it, and yet almost nobody found it in advance. So, Yes, that to me just kind of demonstrates the need for finding a way to get your apps in front of people, which is also why I'm kind of disappointed in the way the Apple TV setup is working, because I just have a hard time believing. I just know from having used it myself that scrolling around that front page is super easy, but you think, oh, now I got to go and do up the search, and then I got to go tap in these letters, and unless you're highly motivated and thinking about the app that you really want right then, there's not a good way to browse. They really needs to get the categories going at least. Yeah,
I mean, on that actually, I did see a couple of mentions. I think it was Steve Troughton-Smith, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. He was saying that there are some categories on the Apple TV App Store, because he's been kind of hacking around in the back end. There's some categories that just have like one or maybe two apps. So it's possible that maybe they're waiting for those categories to be a little bit more filled up before they release them.
Yeah, I saw Mike and Federico talking about that. I heard them talking about it on Virtual yesterday. So I think that's a reasonable supposition. I don't know. So, Rob, with that little bit of history of Squibner, I hope people find it interesting. I mean, obviously I find it interesting. But we like to close our shows not on kind of a serious history lesson, but more on little tidbits and weird things we've seen around the internet in the last couple of weeks. And you're particularly good at finding this stuff. I mean, I have to hand it to you. You find all kinds of interesting things. But this first one is, I saw you and Brian Hamilton tweeting about this back and forth, is that I forget when it was, but what was like 3 weeks ago, he tweeted at you, he sent you an @reply, and then you got notifications about it over and over and over and over again for days.
Yeah, I can't remember the context of the conversation, but yeah, it's essentially I was having a conversation with him and Kyle Seth Gray, and Brian tweeted back to me saying, how's your CES, which is a reference to an in-joke on an old episode of Bionic 73. We'll put that in the show notes. And you know, it was fine. It was funny. I favorited it. We all moved on with our lives. And then I would get a notification for that @reply probably once every 6 or 7 hours for about probably a week. I kind of spoke to Tweetbot, and you know, they replied and said, you know, try clearing your account cache and restarting the phone and the app and things like that. And I tried that a few times and it didn't help. And eventually, I think about a week ago, it actually stopped. But it was just a kind of amusing thing to happen, because every time it would come in, I would screenshot it and send it to Brian as if he was doing it over and over again, which obviously he wasn't.
All right. Right. Now, did you ever get a sense for what was going on or what happened? Do you think it was Tweetbot? Was it the notification system? Any sense of that at all?
I mean, no. I mean, I've certainly got no evidence for it. I mean, my guess would be, because, you know, my other notifications were coming through fine. So my guess would be that it probably just got caught up in the notification system somewhere between Twitter and Tweetbot servers. You know, it's just something was happening in between those two where it would just send this particular one over and over again.
Right. Yeah, I thought it was funny watching you post those screenshots over and over again of Brian asking how your CES is over and over all day long.
I like that it was that tweet as well. That it, you know, was something that's kind of just this weird in-joke that most people won't get, but it was amusing to me that it kept going through.
Yeah. The other thing was angry local people in Portsmouth have emerged once again because they've lost their postmark, right?
Oh, they are angry, John.
What do they get? They're getting the Southampton one now?
Yeah, so just to explain this, so, you know, we have a Royal Mail. I think we spoke about this. You know, it's our equivalent of kind of the, you know, United States Postal Service. They have a sorting office here in Portsmouth that is now closed. So any post that gets sent from here, it gets sent to Southampton and it's dealt with there. So the stamp that they put on a letter or anything that kind of says when it was posted. Or any letters now just say they're sent from Southampton rather than Portsmouth. I mean, I'm saying this to you now, I'm explaining it, and I'm thinking, that sounds fine. Does it really sound like a problem? Does it sound like a problem to you, John?
No, but it's one of those things that people identify. They want their mail to be from where they come from, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the reason it closed, for whatever reason. I mean, obviously, it's a lot of people, I think, lost jobs, which is quite sad. But as a side effect of that particular sorting off its closing, that there is no kind of postmark for Portsmouth now. Now, in and of itself, maybe this is a little bit of a news story, but there are some quotes in this article from various local people that are fantastic. There is our local MP, that's our Member of Parliament for Portsmouth South, said, "That's bad news. I want my letter to come from Portsmouth, not Southampton." And she said she's disappointed because it's important that people know where their post is coming from. I mean,
well, maybe you could open the letter and then who it was coming from and where they're from, right?
Yeah. There's another quote here. A man, Simon from Havant, says, "It's a tragedy for the area." Tragedy is the word he used to describe this.
That's a little over the top.
Yeah, it is a little bit. I'm honest. I'm not sure where they find these people. I mean, I can only imagine they just ask lots of people, and when they get the quotes that they want, that they just kind of pop them in the news story.
Well, I'm kind of hoping they all hang out at the same coffee shop or something, and we can send you down there sometime and ask all sorts of outrageous questions and get some good quotes, and then we could do a whole spin-off on that.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. My favourite quote, I'm not sure. Oh, it was Simon again. He said he tested it by posting a letter to himself, and it had a Southampton stamp. He went out of his way to post himself a letter just to prove his point.
Right, go buy a stamp and send it. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, we may end up in the same boat. Our local post office, it's for sale. The federal government is selling post offices all over the country, and this came up a few years ago, and it still hasn't been sold. But there may be a day when you can't get mail from our town with its postmark either. Well,
there you go. Maybe I'll start. I'll see if I've got any envelopes around with the Portsmouth postmark on it. Maybe it'll be worth some money in a few years.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm going to put a link to this news story in the show notes, and do yourself a favour and go to this and just read some of these quotes, because these people are so angry about something that has basically no consequence to their lives whatsoever.
All right, it's just a stamp on an envelope. No, I saw you tweet these whenever it was, like a week ago or so, and I thought they were really hilarious. I usually wake up in the morning to all your strange tweets because you tend to do them early in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So I think that's probably it for this week. A little bit of a longer show than usual, but I hope people enjoy it. We have had a couple of reviews in iTunes. So if we enjoy reading those. So if you like the show, go rate us on iTunes. That'd be great. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at RMLewisUK, or my website is roblewis.me. And John, where can people find you?
At John Voorhees on Twitter, and then the website is Squibner.com, where you'll see King Me and all the other apps we make.
Fantastic. And we will be back in 2 weeks.
Great. Thanks. See you soon, Rob.
See you later, John.